Your trouble sleeping might be directly linked to unresolved trauma because the body remains in a state of high alert, leading to insomnia, nightmares, and intrusive thoughts, and of course, a whole lot of tossing and turning. But our guest today is here to help you get a good night's rest because Bloom Health Club starts now.
From the Stream Center, welcome to Bloom Health Club, sponsored by Monticciolo Family and Sedation Dentistry.
Health Club. I'm your host, Gayle Guyardo, and science shows unresolved trauma is directly linked to people not being able to get a good night's sleep. Joining me now with ways to heal is sleep strategist and emotional neuroscience expert, Dan Patrick Smith. Thank you so much for being the latest member of Bloom Health Club.
Well, thank you, Gayle. It's a pleasure to be here.
So I want to introduce you to Lily Oberhelman. She is our producer, and she's directing the show today. She'll be jumping in with some questions here or there. And it'll give both of you the opportunity to hear what happened today before work. I actually had the chance to work about an hour and some change with Dan and get a taste of how you help people identify what might be keeping them from getting a good night's sleep. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times that's unresolved trauma, and we store it in in our bodies. Mm-hmm. So tell me a little bit about how you work with folks.
Well, surprisingly enough, I'm probably one of the least likely people I could ever imagine that would be doing this. My background is chemical engineering, private equity, and finance, but I had an interesting story in my life of not being able to feel emotion for the majority of it, and then had an experience that basically healed me. And so as a result, I have spent the past 15 years trying to understand what happened to me and how to be able to share it with other people. And that led into the physical body and somatic work, and being able to understand that we do have all kinds of emotions that are stored and locked in different tissues in different ways that we can bring about through our thoughts. And a lot of times that's impacting our sleep. Sleep was just something that came as a byproduct of many of the people that I had helped in business saying after the fact, hey, I never told you I couldn't sleep, or I haven't been able to sleep through the night in 20 years, and now I sleep like a baby. And that's how I got here.
That's incredible. And I know that you work with groups, you work with individuals, and I know you're trying to get a program together so that all people can kind of tap into what it is that you do. But just in describing my own personal experience with it, which I had no idea what to expect. All I had heard is, like a lot of people really rave about you and they believe in you. And I'm like, all right, I'll give it a try. I'm going to just kind of step into it. And so it's about being in a safe place. Which was my home. It's about being still. There is, you put on some music, and then there's some conversation. And I will say, in addition to understanding about feeling where things are stored, sometimes just the opening up about what I think I always knew what was keeping me up, or what I really needed to process and think about. And I would say on a personal level, just saying the words and just talking about it while the somatic healing methodology was going on really did help a lot. And I only got a 1-hour session. And so if that was just the tip of the iceberg, I can certainly understand why people, embrace this.
Yeah. Well, I think the real key is, the conversation is just a part of it. It's how do we begin to access the emotional content? And in our world, when I say world, it's the West, our culture, we've been really put into a position of believing that we are our thoughts, we are our mind, we are our brain, which I lived that for 40 years. That's not who we are, although we really associate with that. And so the key is to be able to understand there's other parts of us, which is the physical body, the gut neurons. We have a huge number of neurons that think and feel very much like we would think that our brains do. And so because I've lived two different lives, the first 40 years without emotion and since with, I can understand and see things in a very different way than most people. That led into the somatic work and the ability to release emotion.
Lily?
So what are some subtle signs that someone might have this pent up emotional tension, but they say that they feel fine and they go through their day, thinking that everything's jolly, but slowly there's these psychological changes that are happening and they don't really know how to navigate that themselves.
Well, I think that, a lot of times the response that I'm fine or whatever, that is, basically ingrained in us from childhood. And basically our parents saying, hey, this is who you need to be, what you need to do, be seen, not heard, be quiet, don't make sounds, especially don't make those kinds of sounds. Don't be angry, don't be sad. And and it makes sense. Parents want their children to learn how to fit into a culture, but what if that culture has taught us not to express emotion or to be a soldier or to be an employee, but not necessarily to be an independent person that expresses? Well, those types of things are going to inform that child how to behave and how to operate. And then we assume that's our personality as we get older. And so what is interesting is when you realize that I'm not supposed to be sad or I'm not supposed to be angry, then you're not even going to know if you truly should be angry or sad, because you don't have the freedom to express it. In my personal experience, I have seen those things that we try to ignore and we try to limit what our body wants to do. Because a lot of times if you want to cry, it's not your mind that's wanting to cry. You may be sad, but there's literally a physical urge that is coming up. And it's our process of trying to push that down that begins to cause our body, especially with repetitive experiences of that over time, the body's going to begin to push back and say, this is not okay. Mm-hmm. It's going to show up with tension or knots. A lot of times people go to chiropractors or massage therapists to try to get these things out of their bodies, but the body's trying to say, hey, there's something that I don't like that needs to change. A lot of times that something that needs to change is something that your will, your mind of who you think you are and what you need to do and what you want to do is your mission, that your body is saying, that's not okay. Mm-hmm. I need something to shift. And that is your body coming in line to say, hey, hello, this ain't working.
And do you think gender plays a role in expressing emotions? Do you think that men feel less comfortable?
It's a really, really powerful question. And the more that I have worked with highly successful people in all kinds of different ways, this is not necessarily gender specific. This is a human being specific. It's probably more cultural specific than gender. However, there are definitely ways in which gender plays a massive role in the types of content that get locked and pushed down, if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. And I want to kind of talk about the science behind this, because you and I were talking off grid about how, and it was just simply, I went to I went to EMDR. And I really just wanted to get the video of the brain mapping that Dr. Daniel Amen does. So I'm like, I'll just go get my brain mapped and we'll shoot some video of it and then we'll do a story on it. But with the mapping, it shows in your mind what's going on. And what I discovered about myself through this whole process is that a lot of us know how to white knuckle our way through lives. That's right. It's
We're
like
rewarded for it.
Yeah. And it's like you push everything back and you think, because on the surface, it all looks okay and you're keeping all the balls in the air and everything is just fine, that you're okay. And you actually start to condition and convince yourself and make excuses for what you might be feeling and keep repressing and repressing and repressing. But it's still there. And the science supports what you do too. I mean, we're finding more and more that trauma is locked inside of our bodies. Yeah. And until you release it, it doesn't matter what methods you've come up, survival methods, it's a house of cards.
Yeah, and that's the part of the interesting thing. I mean, for the last 15 years or so, I've worked with very, very high-end businesses. We're talking about, up to billion-dollar businesses with people that have these same things going on inside of them. Because a lot of people that achieve these massive successes are driven to achieve so that they can have this thing that we would all call love and connection, to feel loved and just to be okay. And so in their world, the more that they succeed, the more they're going to have that thing that they want, which is probably love and connection. And for some people, it's just success and just money. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about the ones that actually think that they're going to get something different. I was one of those people. And so the key is, as we begin to move further and further down that road, we'll find out our bodies are going to say, hey, no, that's not okay. This is really what I'm looking for. And we don't really have the language to talk about that in our culture. I think that's what's really intriguing, is to be able to allow ourselves an opportunity to say, is this truly what happiness looks like or what success looks like? And if it's not, is there something outside of me or my body that's trying to get my attention to say, this must change, that must change?
And so when you first started doing this, you were trying to help high level business folks kind of pivot and head into even a bigger and better direction. It was along the way, after all of these years of working with people, that you realized that sleep was the byproduct that was a common denominator for so many people that you worked with.
Yeah, Matthew Walker wrote a really amazing book called Why We Sleep, and he talks a lot about these things. It was interesting because recently I was doing I'm always doing research, and I found this study on the amygdala, which is basically it's our fear complex, in the sense of where it is in the root of our brain that says something's dangerous. And it was interesting because it talked about sleep deprivation magnifies the amygdala. And so it makes us way more emotional and way more on guard at all times. And so if we lose sleep chronically or acutely overnight, it is magnifying our fear complex and magnifying our emotional states. And those things were affecting even business people. And so the greater the business, you're still running it from a psychology or a person that's trying to avoid those fears. And the more responsibility and pressure that gets put on a person, the more it affects their sleep, which becomes an issue that affects their emotional state during the day. And it's literally bi-directional. Your emotional content and REM sleep helps process that emotional content. And then if you can't get enough REM sleep, then it makes you more emotional during the day, which then creates more situations for you to be upset about. So it's a vicious cycle. But when I was working with these high-end companies, and still do, it's amazing how often just homeostasis and calmness and presence and centeredness shows up when you allow the emotional stuff that you didn't even know was there to be released.
And that would be how I would describe how I felt. When I first sat up, I felt dizzy. I felt almost like this big release came about me. And then I felt like an overwhelming sense of calm. And I came into the news, and Lily could tell you, when I come in, I hit the ground running. But I was really having to focus and try to get through the workday before we started the show earlier. So it definitely, even after just 1 hour, somehow it starts to create this calm. And I can see why people might want to crave for more of that, because that's not the state I usually walk around. And I'm a happy person. I don't walk around cranky or moody or any of those things, but I do walk around with a lot of pressure on me and trying to get a lot done in a day. And so it felt good to feel that release.
Well, and I would, a lot of times, because I get to do some pretty cool work with people. And so one of the things I would ask you in this setting, I'll just go ahead and ask, is how often are you allowed not to be that person, Gayle?
Very rarely.
Yeah, very rarely.
Because if I'm not that person at home, I've assigned myself to be that. Or at work, I've assigned myself to be that person at home. And it's no one's pushing this on me. This is a Gayle thing. I'm I'll get all the gifts. I'll wrap all the gifts. I will send out all the cards. I will decorate the tree, the this, the that. I stay in this constant, fight or flight mode of needing to get things done. And when I rest, I almost get nervous at the thought that
Shouldn't I be doing something?
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So is that what you're trying to help people achieve, to understand how to just feel themselves and be still with themselves?
Yeah, well, and a lot of my original work is really in leadership. So because I put my brain on a pedestal, I was very successful and basically stopped working in a real job at a pretty early age. And then that's when I began to realize my emotional constraints and limitations. And it was through the healing of those things and through this work that I began to realize, oh my goodness, well, no wonder. I used to joke around, I couldn't lead anybody. I was a public company CEO for a short period of time. And I realized I couldn't lead people because I had the personality of a wall. It's I didn't have an emotional connection. And it was because of my inability to access emotion that I couldn't necessarily relate to people. And so it's through this work and other work that I began to realize true leadership and true sales, true ability to be able to raise money, even for series and seed rounds and private equity raises or venture capital, is rooted in your authentic expression and groundedness. So it's when you have that level of presence and/or here I am and I feel grounded, that you can truly connect to other people, whether it's in sales or leadership or anything else.
That's really fascinating about the authenticity part of all of this. And you say being vulnerable is part of that.
Well, I think that, Brene Brown did a lot of really beautiful work and shared a lot on vulnerability. And I absolutely agree with her. However, I would put, you can't just go be vulnerable like for a demonstration. And that's what she's pointing out as well. But it's people crave authenticity. And people will open up around authenticity because they realize it's safe. It's like, oh, I know who this person is. And my brain, as well as my body, feels safe. And when I feel safe, I'm going to be present. And I'm also going to invest, or I'm going to buy. We want to do business with people that we know are there and who they are. If we have any sort of sense, whether it's logical or intuitive, we're going to say, I don't want to be around that person. There's dangerous. Something doesn't feel right. And so really that's why authenticity is so key. And this work is so powerful because it's clearing out the emotional content that is going to create a disconnect for other people, whether they're intuitive or whether they're present or whether they're just mental. They're going to their words don't match what I feel from them, even if I can't put language to it. It's like something feels off. I can't put my finger on it, but our protective centers, whatever that is for you, is going to say, I don't want to do that. And if you can get into dysfunction as well, then there's going to be people that are going to be attracted into different types of relationships. And this is where we get into the repetitive patterns that show up either in business or in physical health and or relationships. It's all tied together.
Before we get to your question, I just want to wrap up that thought real quick and say that it's really hard for me to believe, after knowing only this version of you, that the other version of you ever existed. Because the man I met over the last couple of years has been, somebody like right when I got with you, I'm like, I'm going to tell this guy something I really haven't told anyone. And so, so you really obviously, whatever your work has been or your own life journey, you've obviously made major strides.
Thank you. It's been a 15-year journey of things that I would have never set out or looked at or even believed in, honestly. I grew up in the buckle of the Bible Belt and wouldn't have believed that this kind of stuff could even happen.
Yeah,
So.
very interesting. Lily, I knew you had a thought you wanted to share. That's our cue when she slides in.
I tried to be subtle about it. Well, you kind of answered my question, but you think that the key to charisma is authenticity.
I believe that's a fundamental part. I mean, charisma, I think, it is built on authenticity, because otherwise it's just a performance. And I think that the most important part, especially if you're raising millions and millions of dollars, you better really believe in what you're saying. Otherwise, you're going to have to be some sort of sociopath con man or something like that, which, believe it or not, I worked for some of those in my 30s. Mm-hmm. That's part of what helped me figure some of this stuff out, or feel some of this stuff out, I should say. And so charisma is an outgrowth of an authentic, grounded personality that is free and doesn't have a lot of rules about this is what I'm supposed to do and that's what I'm supposed to say, because that feels filtered and it feels structured. Charisma is natural. It can be taught, but it also needs to be grounded with somebody they're not running a program of I have to do this and I can't do that and I can't do this. And that's why structured presentations fall short of somebody that's truly just there because they love it.
Now, in addition to, talking through some things, part of the process of what you do involves something called somatic healing, where we're going into our body. We might even be going back to that child and kind of recognizing how these patterns came to be. But what I really found to be the most interesting, or the hardest part of it all for me, and I'll let you kind of explain why you think this is, but when you're like, I need to hear sound come out of you. For me, I was like, oh my God, this guy's going to think I'm crazy. I can't make a sound. Like I was sitting there in silence. You had to keep coaxing and coaxing and coaxing just to get a exhale or anything out of me. Why do you think that is?
Well, and I wouldn't use the word coaxing, because in this type of work, it's all about safety.
Right.
Our bodies and our structure, even from childhood, it's wired into the evolutionary parts of us. It's like we are going to move towards pleasure and away from pain and away from threat. I mean, this is. I mean, you can go into the very cellular biology and you can see these behaviors going on. We're just way more advanced with a prefrontal cortex, and we've put all these rules and things on top of it. So the key is we have built all of these decades of our lives in a structure of a culture that doesn't really allow expression. We don't allow expression because it's dangerous and it doesn't necessarily fit within the mold. And so as a result, we don't even realize how hard it is for us to truly express, especially something that we feel is going to feel or look like weakness in and around other people. And so one of the really key parts of this work is doing it in a private, quiet place where nobody can hear you. Because if you subconsciously know that someone was within the house or within the building that you can be heard, you're not going to be able to make these sounds, because we're making sounds of like groaning or sadness or anger or the things that anybody that's going to hear that within earshot is probably going to come like think you're weird or strange or stop that or try to come help you. And so that part of us in the back of our mind is like, it's there to protect us. We don't want to make those sounds around other people. So part of my work is around creating a space that is away from that. And then my presence, not coaxing, but inviting.
Yeah, it was more of an invitation. Yeah.
To be able to go into these places and encouraging you, say, it's okay.
To do it.
I'm here. It's going to be okay. And I promise many people, I can't tell you how many times I've heard the word, I'm going to break into a million pieces if I do that. Like, no, you won't. I promise. But you will continue to try to hold together something that isn't real and authentic for the rest of your life if you can't, because your body is asking to be seen in these ways. And if we don't give it that voice, this leads to patterns that we don't like. And a lot of times it comes up in illness in the body in different ways.
And like for me, like just you could feel knots and like my whole like up here in this area. And I know it's all related to the stress I carry, to the emotions that I carry, because it'll flare up,
Right.
you know, and you think, oh,
Absolutely.
maybe I pulled something at the gym. Or maybe you're dealing with something on a very emotional level that you have not
right.
addressed properly.
And a lot of times, and this is the fascinating part, because the physicality and the medical aspects of it are all very intriguing to me. But my engineer background, chemical engineering and structural engineering in different ways, I am paying attention to the way the body is moving. So a lot of times you can literally see it in people's structure, which is like they're trying to protect, a certain part of their body where these emotions are held. And then at the same time, if you're in a position or an awareness of saying, oh, well, this is not good, I need to show strength and power, then I'm pulling back. Well, then you've got counteracting, things and energies going on within your body. And that's a lot of times where these knots end up forming, and we'll pull ourselves out of order and out of structure. And that's where chiropractic helps. But the release of emotion completely changes the structure of the body. And when you change the structure of the body, you also change the type of thoughts that you think. It's a little interesting, but it truly does happen.
And it's interesting because the knots and the crinks and all of these things, I was talking to my husband on the way into work after you and I had our session. And I was like, it's really interesting because my husband said to me, you really haven't had all this neck pain and this pain and all these things happening in a really long time. But about a month ago, there was like a flare up of family drama, and I take that kind of stuff very seriously. And all of a sudden it came back. There was no injury. There was no carrying it. I was trying to think, but it definitely is tied to emotions. So I know that, right now you're still working with groups and private clients, but you are going to be rolling out a program, correct?
I am going to be rolling out. That's part of my task is to be able to share this in a larger way with the world. It's taken me about 15 years to really put language to understand it. And I went through a complete life transformation in the sense of what it brought to me. And then I've been able to replicate it and see it with massive businesses and business owners, and then, private individuals as well. And the fun thing is it runs from the physical wellness, health, and aspect of that healing, always tied to some sort of pattern shift in business or relationships. So the key is to be able to create a program that people can access and use.
I look forward to that. I really do. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, well, thank you for inviting me.
All right. Well, you can watch our streaming show anytime. And a special thanks to Monticciolo Family and Sedation Dentistry for believing in us enough to put this show on air. You can watch Bloom Health Club on Apple TV, Fire TV, Roku, Samsung TV, WFLA.com, and YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcast. I will see you on the next Bloom Health Club.